Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our 8th regional webinar held across the province outlining the government's supports in light of COVID-19. My name is Derek Rowland. I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff and Director of Communications to the Honourable Lisa MacLeod, Ontario's Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture Industries, and I get the pleasure of being your moderator today. Before we begin our formal portion of the presentation, I first want to introduce MPP Norm Miller for some introductory remarks. MPP Miller, over to you.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Minister MacLeod for organizing today's event. I certainly think that Minister MacLeod's been doing a great job of communicating with all that are affected in the heritage, sport, tourism, and culture industry sectors. And I think she probably has set some sort of record for the number of engagements she's held in these tough COVID times. So I want to thank the Minister for that and thank her for today's presentation that is going to outline how the businesses that are hurting can access support through the Ontario government. So I really appreciate all the hard work you've been doing, Minister MacLeod, and keep it up. And we're getting hopefully near the end of all this in the next few months, but it's going to be a challenging time still. So, and very challenging for many of our businesses. So thank you for doing this today. It's appreciated.
Thank you so much, Norm. Thank you for joining us today and for your leadership on tourism. And I know you've done a number of events and consultations for me. And I know your area has been particularly hard hit, being both a tourism hub, but also a very important cultural and heritage hub as well for us. And last week or 2 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to talk about how important sporting is in your community. So I know COVID-19 has been less than ideal for our sectors and in particular for your region. And so that's why I wanted to talk about some business supports and how to access those supports that the government has. So we have about 100 people on the line today. If you have any questions, there's a chat box below. Ask questions, we'll try and answer them in real time. You're also able to email me directly at minister.macleod@ontario.ca. Again, minister.macleod@ontario.ca, as some of the programs that we're going to be talking about today are not within our ministry's purview, but are with one of our sister ministries, but are open to heritage, sport, tourism, and culture industries. The plan for today will be handing it over to both Patricia Vina and Kevin Finnerty, who work with the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, and Culture Industries. Many of you know Kevin, who's my ADM, and they'll be walking you through what the recent restrictions mean with the stay-at-home order. And then they'll be talking about two imminent funding opportunities for the sectors through the Ontario Trillium Foundation and the Ontario Arts Council. And so first, the Ontario Trillium Foundation will see its budget, its annual $103 million budget, grow by $30 million this year and an additional $75 million next year in order to support tourism, culture, and sport, as well as heritage organizations, as well as many other not-for-profits. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. In addition, we will be investing an additional $25 million to the Ontario Arts Council, $24 million of which will go to Ontario's key and core cultural institutions to help them survive this pandemic and hopefully thrive when we are at the other end of this. And there will be $1 million that will go toward individual artists. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll then throw it over to the Ministry of Finance, who will walk through other government supports for small businesses. And so that will be the up to $20,000 grant for small businesses, the PPE $1,000 investment that you can access, as well as the energy bill and the property tax relief. So once they walk you through those three programs, we will then ask the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services to join us for a demonstration on how to access these funds through the government portal, and it will be a very thorough demonstration that takes you step by step on how to access these funds. So again, I know we've been in this pandemic for 10 months. There still remains a great deal of uncertainty as the province is still in a lockdown. I hope I have more to say to you all next week with a telephone town hall or a webinar of this sort on what the lockdown will look like when we come out of it, and how we can best support all of you. So again, encourage you all to take notes, to share this information. We will be sending an email after the fact so that you will have access to the OTF, OAC, and the government portal websites. In addition, we will be providing a copy of the decks and this recording that we are making today. So thank you all very much. I'm now going to turn it over to Derek, who will introduce our next two speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. MPP Miller. Just a reminder, if you do have questions throughout the presentation, you can use the QA function below. We just may take this offline and ask you to email directly minister.mcleod@ontario.ca if we need to redirect your question accordingly. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Finnerty, an Assistant Deputy Minister within our Tourism, Culture and Heritage Division here within our ministry. Kevin, over to you.
Okay, great, Derek. Thank you very much. Our presentation is coming up. What Patricia and I will do is walk you through the current restrictions that are in place in our lockdown period and provide a bit more of a sneak preview of the upcoming programs that are being launched through the Ontario Children Foundation and the Ontario Arts Council. So if we go to the next slide, please. So just wanted to remind everyone, what I'm going to go through with Patricia will be the businesses that are permitted to open, as well as sector-specific restrictions as they impact tourism, culture, and sports sectors. A quick reminder, if you want more details on this, always refer to the regulation, which is Ontario Regulation 8220 for all the specific details. So the next slide, please. So I will start with businesses that are allowed to open, as well as sector-specific restrictions as they impact the tourism and culture sectors. So a lot of this will be familiar to you, so I'll go through this pretty quickly, but a reminder, for meeting and event spaces at the present time, they're only allowed to open for limited purposes, such as childcare, recreational skill building programs, court services, government services, on a limited basis for mental health and addiction support services, social services, and collective bargaining, as long as there's no more than 10 people in the entire rental space. Key point, if anyone is going into these spaces for these allowed uses, there must be a collection of contact information for possible follow-up. Short-term rentals, for instance, Airbnb, etc., only to be provided to people who are in need of housing. Previously made reservations for short-term rental accommodations are only permitted if the individual is in need of housing. Ice fishing huts may be rented for day use and for use by members of the same household, with some exceptions. Obviously, any conditions on ice fishing do not apply if it's for the purpose of exercising an Aboriginal or treaty right. Restaurants, bars, and other food and drink establishments are closed with the exception of takeout, drive-through, and delivery, and that includes the sale of alcohol. Next slide, please. In terms of hotels, motels, lodges, cabins, cottages, resorts, they are allowed to open, but any shared amenities like pools, indoor fitness centers, indoor recreational facilities that are part of the operation must be closed. Seasonal campgrounds can only be made available for trailers and recreational vehicles used by people who are in need of housing. And obviously the only services allowed to be open would be electricity, water, or sewage disposal. Recreational and other shared facilities, including washrooms and showers, must be closed, and other areas of the seasonal campground must be closed to the general public as well. Previously made reservations for short-term rental accommodation only allowed if an individual is in need of housing. For our media industries or creative industries, music, sound recording, production, publishing, and distribution allowed. Commercial film and television production, including related activities like hair, makeup, and wardrobe, that continues to be allowed. Key thing and recent updates, a film and television set can be located in any business or any place, including a business or place that is otherwise required to be closed. So if a closed restaurant is being used for film and television production, that is allowed to take place. There could be no more than 10 performers on a film or television set at any one time. The set must be configured and operated in a way to enable physical distancing of at least 2 meters. People who provide hair and makeup services must wear appropriate PPE. And if there are singers or players of brass or wind instruments, they must be separated from other performers by plexiglass or some other form of impermeable barrier. Film and television post-production, film and television visual effects, and animation studios are allowed to operate. Book and periodical publication, production and publishing, they're allowed to operate. Commercial and industrial photography services are allowed to operate. And interactive digital media businesses, which really covers video games, are allowed to operate. That includes computer system software or application developers and publishers, as well as video game developers and publishers. Next slide, please. On the entertainment front, concert venues, theaters, and cinemas, and this includes drive-in and drive-through events, are closed for all purposes. And that does include rehearsals or performances of a recorded or broadcasted concert, artistic event, theatrical performance, or other performance. Libraries may open for contactless curbside pickup and return or for delivery. Of course, any materials that are lent out must be disinfected or quarantined for an appropriate period of time before they're recirculated. Libraries may also provide some limited services like childcare, mental health and addictions, and social services. If anyone is using a library for a childcare service or other services that are listed on this page, contact information recording is absolutely required. Museums and other cultural amenities are closed. Horse racing is only allowed for training. Nightclubs and strip clubs can only open if they operate as a food or drink establishment under the rules for restaurants that I outlined earlier. Next slide, please. Zoos and aquariums, amusement parks, water parks, tour and guide services are all closed. At zoos and aquariums, obviously access is allowed for them to operate for the care of animals. So those are the restrictions as they affect the tourism and culture sectors. I will now turn it over to Patricia to walk you through the rules in place for sport and recreation. Over to you, Patricia.
Thank you, Kevin. So with respect to indoor and outdoor sport and recreational facilities, all facilities are currently closed. There are only a few exemptions, which are for professional leagues. That's 7 listed leagues, such as the NHL, CFL, the NBA. All of these require plans approved by the Ontario Chief Medical Officer of Health. There is also an exemption for athletes who have been identified as training or competing for the next Olympics and Paralympics. In addition, a facility may open for the purposes of providing space for childcare, as defined by the Child Care and Early Years Act, mental health and addiction support services, so long as there is no more than 10 people, and the provision of social services. There are some conditions such as the capacity limits and recording name and contact information. In addition, there are some amenities that are permitted to open subject to conditions. The list is there. Those amenities include baseball diamonds, basketball courts, tennis courts, playgrounds. Downhill ski currently are closed. However, Minister MacLeod has established a working group with officials and ski industry experts, and we will continue to work closely with these operators to facilitate a safe return post-shutdown. Next slide, please. These amenities listed in the regulation may only open if you maintain a physical distance of at least 2 meters from any other person. Team sports are not practiced or played. Other sports or games that are likely to result in individuals coming within 2 meters of each other are also not practiced or played. And then any locker rooms, change rooms, showers, clubhouses would have to be closed, except for things like access to storage, a washroom, or to provide first aid. Next slide, please.
Okay, thanks, Patricia. It's Kevin Finnerty again. So I just want to provide a few more details on the 2 initiatives that Minister MacLeod referred to earlier in her presentation. As you may recall, Ontario's budget in 2020, which was tabled in November, announced that the province would invest $100 million over 2 years to develop a community building fund that would support community tourism, cultural, and sport organizations, which have been experiencing significant financial pressures due to the pandemic. The funding support will be available to non-for-profit organizations and municipalities, and the program will be delivered by the Ontario Children Foundation, and it will have 2 streams. The first is supports for local community tourism, heritage, and culture not-for-profits, such as museums, local theaters, fairs, and cultural institutions, really to help sustain their operations in the short term, but to help them in the longer term create new attractions, experiences, and events. The second stream is funding for municipalities and not-for-profit sport and rec organizations to make investments in infrastructure, rehabilitation, and renovation in order to meet public health protocols as well as the needs of local communities. The Ontario Trinity Foundation has been selected as the delivery agent because it is very well positioned to deliver funding to municipalities, Indigenous communities, and the entire not-for-profit sector. They have strong relationships with sector stakeholders, massive amounts of experience delivering grants on behalf of the government in a very timely manner. They also have great systems in place for processing and evaluating funding applications, as well as for tracking and reporting on results. As the minister said, we are just finalizing the program parameters for this particular initiative as we speak, and we hope to be able to speak in more detail on it in the coming days. The second initiative, which is on the next slide, is emergency funding for the arts sector. So Budget 2020 also announced that the government would be providing one-time funding of $25 million for Ontario's arts institutions to help them cover operating losses incurred as a result of the pandemic. This funding will be really important to help them remain solvent and prepare for a time when they can reopen their facilities, resume programming, and welcome back visitors and all their audiences. The Arts Council is the program delivery agent because they have a long history of funding to the arts sector, lots of expertise, and that includes funding to Ontario's large arts organizations like the Shaw Festival or the Stratford Festival. The OAC also has really good systems in place for both processing and evaluating funding applications. They track and report on results really well. Once again, we're just finalizing the program details for this particular initiative. We'll have more to say on it in the coming days. So that's the conclusion of Patricia and my part of the presentation. I'll turn it back to Derek now to take you to the next item on our agenda. Over to you, Derek.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Patricia, I appreciate you walking everyone through those restrictions, as well as the upcoming Community Building Fund and Core Arts support. I know there's a lot of buzz around that. A lot of people are looking for more information, and we look forward to rolling that out very shortly. But also thank you for walking through those restrictions as they're currently in place as part of the provincial-wide lockdown. It's important to understand those as it does factor into the eligibility criteria for our next presentation on the small business support grants, which is brought to you by Tim Sherman. He's an Assistant Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Finance. So with that, Tim, I will turn it over to you to begin your presentation.
Thank you for that. So it's going to provide a kind of a high-level overview of the grant and hopefully be a helpful scene setter before folks take you through the detail of the portal. So turning to slide 2, government announced the move to a broader province-wide shutdown on December the 21st, and at the same time announced that it would be introducing a new Ontario Small Business Support Grant in recognition of the impact that the shutdown would have on Ontario small businesses. It's worth noting that this new grant is over and above other existing programs that the province has put in place, such as the property tax and energy rebates, or the support that's available to businesses through many federal programs. So the new grant will provide a minimum of $10,000 and up to $20,000 for eligible small businesses that are expected to experience a minimum of a 20% decline in revenue. So every small business will be able to use the support to navigate the challenging times and whatever makes the most sense for them. I think all of you on this call will have a much better sense of some of the ways in which businesses will be able to use this support. And there are 3 basic eligibility requirements in the bottom of the slide, which are probably a helpful framework to use when thinking about eligibility for the program. So first, the business needs to be either closed or significantly restricted by the provincial shutdown. And we have a list of businesses or categories of businesses that meet that eligibility later on in the slide deck. And the portal, of course, and the application will make that clear. Second, this is targeted at small businesses. And so the definition that is being used for this program is common in other contexts. And it's having less than 100 employees. So basically between 0 and 99 employees at the enterprise level. And finally, the business needs to be able to demonstrate that it will experience a minimum of 20% revenue decline as a result of the shutdown. The primary way that this will be measured is by comparing April 2020 with April 2019 monthly revenue. But there are alternate measurements in place for businesses who were maybe established outside this window. And we also have a slide to show you what some of those comparative points will be. And of course, applications for the new program opened today. So the portal that folks will take you through is now available for applications. Next slide, please. So there's just a couple of examples on this slide, which we thought might be helpful to take folks through so you can kind of understand how those parameters that I just walked through sort of tangibly work their way through the program. So we have kind of two companies, Company A, Company B on the bottom of the slide there. And I think we just assume that both these companies meet the business eligibility test in terms of being shut down or significantly restricted. And if you look at Company A on the left, so you'll see that it says there it'll experience a monthly loss of $20,000, which is equivalent in their context to a 25% decline in revenue. So that means they meet the 20% revenue test, and they will be eligible for a $20,000 grant, which is also the maximum, but it fully offsets the revenue decline that's been presented by the company. And then on the right, there's a monthly loss of $15,000, which is also 20%. So they meet the 20% threshold for the decline, and that entire amount, $15,000, would be funded. So turning the slide forward to talk a little bit about the revenue comparators. So as I mentioned before, businesses that perhaps were not in operation in April 2019 will still be able to calculate a revenue decline using various alternative revenue decline comparators. And the goal here is to make sure that all small businesses will be able to be eligible to apply for the grant. As you see, the chart on this slide shows the different comparators. So I think one thing you'll notice when you look at the comparators is what the program is trying to capture is 2 points in time, one where the business would have been kind of in normal operations versus when they would have been experiencing some kind of public health restriction. So for example, if you look at the second row in the chart, this is for a small business that went into operation after April 2019, and so as a result couldn't use that more general comparator. So sometime between May 2019 and January 2020, the revenue comparator that they would use is February 2020 and April 2020. And when you think back, February was sort of the pre-pandemic, pre-lockdown, provincial lockdown month, whereas April, the province was in a lockdown scenario. And so as a result, it's meant to be a good representation of the impact that that business would have been experienced in the current provincial shutdown. And then just a note at the bottom of the slide, winter seasonal businesses will also be permitted to apply, and there's an alternative revenue decline comparator of they can choose between December 2019 and December 2020 or January 2020 and December 2020, and that's just a recognition that winter seasonal businesses may have a different rhythm and cadence to their business, and so we're providing some flexibility for those businesses. All right, and then slide 5 provides the list of eligible small business types. So these are ones that are subject to closures or significant restrictions under the current shutdown. As we mentioned, this is sort of the first test that businesses need to meet as part of the application process. And if they meet this plus the revenue test, they will be able to receive a minimum of $10,000 and up to $20,000. For the period of the provincial shutdown, I just wanted to note that this is also the list of businesses that will be eligible for the, excuse me, for the property tax and energy rebate. So I know we're focusing on this program, but it's just another reminder that there are other support programs in place for businesses. So if they don't meet some of the other tests, for example, around revenue or employees, there are these other rebates that we can also apply for. And it's all in the same portal, which makes it much easier for businesses to be able to enter that information. And then the footnote on the bottom there, just to be clear that there are businesses that are not eligible. And those include those that were already required to close prior to the introduction of the modified stage 2 measures in October. So that's kind of the starting point for determining business eligibility. And then of course, any essential businesses that are permitted to operate either within capacity restrictions or otherwise deemed essential are not eligible for the program. And so this is the final slide, and hopefully that gives you a good snapshot of program parameters and eligibility. And I will turn it over to, I guess, folks to take you through.
Thanks so much, Tim. I appreciate you walking us through some of the finer details of the Small Business Support Grant. For those of you who may have joined us previously, we did a similar presentation before the holidays, talking about the upcoming supports to put them both on everyone's radar, but also to encourage you to take support, take advantage of the support that is by submitting an application. That went through some of the finer details around eligibility, so you have a full understanding. But next, I'm going to turn it over to Manish Agrawal, who's a representative from the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services, to explain exactly how to apply for those grants, including the Main Street grant, the PPE grant, as well as energy rebates through the TPON database. So with that, Manish, I will turn it over to you to walk us through your presentation.
So I've heard about this new program, and I come to Ontario.ca with a beautiful background. Here, I click on English, and I see the link where it says support we are providing for small business. So I want to know, as a small business, what kind of support I'm getting from the Government of Ontario. I click on this link, which takes me to a page with all details about the different programs that the Government of Ontario is having for in support of small businesses. I see here that there's a new program. I click on it, and it takes me to the page where it provides me the list of the programs that are currently available: Ontario Small Business Support Grant, Ontario Main Street Relief Grant, PP support, property tax, energy cost rebates, and what you need to apply. So the program information, what the program is, what I will get as a small business, what are the eligibility criteria, and information about the other programs as well. So I decide to apply for the Ontario Small Business Support Grant because I meet the eligibility criteria. I'll click on apply for funding. Now, when I click for apply for funding, I'm going to show you the test page because I don't want to overwhelm the live system. So it brings me to a page like this. So what you have here is that get help button, which allows me to get help from the contact center or get access to the program information guide. If I want to apply in French, I can switch to French as well. If I've already applied for the other programs, I don't need to start a new application. I can resume the application, or if I've saved the application for draft because I didn't add all the information, I can continue with the same application. Or I can apply for funding. I can start with a new application. So given that I'm a new applicant, I'm going to click on apply for funding. And it brings me to this page where I need to check the eligibility, if I can apply for these programs or not. By default, the new program is selected. I can select multiple programs if I'm interested, or I can just apply for that program. Click on check eligibility, which will again take me to a series of questions to check my eligibility for the program. The first question for the Small Business Support Grant program is, was my business required to close temporarily or significantly restrict services as a result of being subject to province-wide shutdown? I will say yes. Does your business have less than 100 employees? That's the definition for a small business. You can say yes. And is my business expecting at least a 20% revenue decline? I have a handy reference to the business guide that I can access if I want to know more information about what revenue decline means. I'll say yes, and then I click on next. Now it says that I'm eligible for the following funding program, the Ontario Small Business Grant. I'm going to start my application. Now, when I start my application, it takes me to a series of steps. It's going to ask me to provide my business information, my contact information, information related to the new Ontario Small Business Support Grant, then review all the information I provided in the 3 steps, provide my banking information, and submit. So I come here, I provide my legal name. So I'm running a small business, Olivia's Tea Room, so I provide the information. I run it as Store of Happiness. And I provide my CRA business number. Now, at this stage, I can validate the business number if I'm not sure if my business number is correct or not. If it's correct, I don't need to validate it there. If I don't know where to get the business number, we provide a handy tip. It can be found on the GST, HST return, or the employer payroll, or T2 corporate tax filing. Now, if I'm a self-proprietor who doesn't have a business number, we also provide a handy link on how to obtain the business number from the CRA website. The next step is to provide the address information. I can use address lookup postal code, or if I know the address, I can directly key it in. Okay, so I have that. My billing address is same as head office address. If it is different, I can provide that as well. Click on next. Here I'm going to provide my contact information. Nash, last name is phone number, and my email address. Okay, so I've provided information, I've confirmed my email address is that. It's very important to provide the correct email address, validate it again, because that's the address that is being used in terms of sending emails, confirming the receipt of your application, confirming the payment process, and if you have to come back and resume your application. I'm going to confirm that I'm the owner and I have the signing authority for the individual, trust, or the business. At this point, I can save a draft, which allows me to come back. If I don't have all the information, I can come back and resume the application. All this information will be saved. I don't have to provide that information again. Click on next. Now here I'm going to provide information very specific to the Ontario Small Business Support Grant. Right up front, we provide the application guide, which the users can review, the applicants can review in case they have more questions or they want to find more about the program. I need to provide my business type, and it's restaurants and bars. Now it asks me if my question is part of an enterprise or an affiliated enterprise. We have a handy tip in terms of what it means, enterprise, or they can refer to the application guide for more information. So my business is not part of an enterprise, so I'm not going to check that. Now here, if I was having a winter seasonal business, like a ski resort or any business that is associated with winter seasonal, I can say yes, and it will ask me a series of questions. If my business was in operation in the current business structure in December 2019, if I say yes, it's going to ask me for my highest monthly revenue, either in December 2019 or January 2020, given that many winter seasonal businesses don't start operating until January. For the purposes of this demo, I'll say no, my business is not a winter seasonal business. Then the next question is, was my business in operation in the current business structure in April 2019? If I say yes, it will ask me to provide number of employees, my revenue in April 2019, my revenue in April 2020. If I say no, it prompts me to provide my business first full month of operation, the month, and based on that, it's going to ask me for the same information in terms of number of employees, what was my revenue, and in February 2020, what was my revenue in April 2020. For the purpose of the demo, again, I'll say yes, it was in business structure in operation in April 2019. The number of employees were 10. The revenue was 10,000 in April 2019. In April 2020, the revenue is 2,000. Then I attest that the information I'm providing is all good. I go through the terms and conditions. They agree. I've provided now information with respect to this program. I'll say next. Now here I can review all the information I've provided, the business information, the contact information, sorry, the information related to Ontario Small Business Support Grant. So all the information has been provided. It all looks good. I can go to the next step, which is to provide my banking information. There's a sample check, copy of sample check provided, just in case people want to see where their branch, what their branch number, institution number, and account number is located on the check. So I'll put that in here. And I'll select the institution number. Now there are many banks. We're just not limiting to the top 5. We cover a broad spectrum of banks within the province. And provide the account number. That's it. Then verify that all the information I provided is correct and click on submit. So when I click on submit, again, some terms and conditions. I'll be attesting as Manish Agarwal that all the information I'm providing is true, agree, and submit. So once I do that, my application is submitted. And so it's just a test environment. So it's saying that there's a problem because I've already used the CRA business number. So we have a check as well to ensure that the CRA business number is not used again. There's only one application that can be submitted with that application. But once I click on submit, my application will be submitted, and I'll get a notification saying that your submission, your application has been submitted. Let me quickly share the email with you on how it looks. The business will receive an email similar to this, where it says that you've applied for this program, this is your authorization number, and it's under review. And if it's approved, you will receive a subsequent confirmation email notifying that your payment has been processed. And that it takes around 2 weeks to receive your payment once the application has been approved.
Great, thank you, Manish. I appreciate you walking through exactly how to take advantage of those supports and submit an application, and certainly we encourage everyone to do so. Before we wrap up today's presentation, I'm going to turn it over back to the Minister for some closing remarks. Minister, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Derek, and thanks to all of our panelists today for taking the time to share how to access these 5 different funding opportunities within the sectors. Obviously, we will be seeing a provincial budget in March, so I suspect at that time there will be additional opportunities to support the sectors. Wanted to know if MPP Miller wanted to have any closing remarks to speak to his constituents. I know he's been working hard and very vocal at the legislature, defending this community and your community and your livelihoods. So with that, I just want to say thank you. And again, contact minister.mcleod@ontario.ca. We're going to continue to be in constant communication with you as we move through this pandemic. So MPP Miller, would you like to offer any other thoughts?
Sure. Thank you, Minister, and thanks for going through the basics of the programs and how to apply for them. I would simply still, as I have done on other occasions, make a pitch for those businesses that fall through the cracks. So we do have some businesses that are, for all effective purposes, shut down because of the stay-at-home order. So the small B&Bs, for example, that are effectively shut down but don't qualify for the Ontario Small Business Grant. And so certainly I've just written to the finance minister this past week and brought it up in caucus, but I think there are still some gray areas where businesses are being very heavily affected that still need support. And I know you will be listening to them, and I know lots of submitted questions for responses on the Q&A line as well. So appreciate all the support you have provided and helping make it clear how you do apply for the existing programs.
We appreciate that. And one of the things that our team has been doing consistently throughout this pandemic is when one of our sectors or types of business may have some challenges, we will work with our sister ministries to see if we can alleviate those concerns. So we certainly do appreciate you bringing them to our attention, and we're on it. So thank you so much, Norm, and thank you to all of you. We had almost 100 people on the line, or maybe probably did over 100 over the period. As I said, we will be sending out an email with the links for all of these programs, and we will also be sending out a copy of this presentation. So all my very best to each of you. So please stay home, stay safe, and save lives, and protect yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.